To nobody's surprise, Marvel has another hit on its gauntlet. Avengers Infinity War is pounding down pretty much every record set at the US box office, as well as the record set in just about every other country's box office in its opening weekend. It's so big that some countries are considering changing their laws to prevent big Hollywood films from dominating the box office in their own theaters. We'll be breaking down all the records broken this past weekend and what it means for the film industry in general right after this.
Show me what you got.
How's it going, guys and geeks? Welcome to the Geekritique show. My name is Dakota, and Avengers Infinity War is making a lot of money. Unless something crazy happens and people just stop seeing this movie, this will be Marvel Studios' sixth film to break the $1 billion mark in worldwide gross. So it's basically like the Mind Stone of the MCU, and we just let Disney get their hands on it. So how big is this movie? Early estimates for Avengers Infinity War's domestic opening weekend were record-breaking at around $250 million, but the numbers have finally rolled in, and they're even bigger. In the US alone, the film has grossed over $258.2 million in its opening weekend, beating out the previous record holder, Star Wars The Force Awakens, which held the record of $247.9 million since 2015. This now means that 9 out of the 10 highest grossing opening weekends ever are held by Disney-owned films, 6 of which are Marvel movies. It really doesn't get much more incredible than that. But it actually does. Infinity War made almost $30 million more in its first 3 days than Justice League made in its entire domestic run of 119 days. That's not actually that impressive of a feat, considering Black Panther, a character most movie-going audiences barely knew a year ago, made more than Justice League did in its first 4 days. For the sake of counting records, let's just throw in the fact that this is also the widest PG-13 film ever. This is the biggest April release ever, biggest spring release ever, biggest Saturday, biggest Sunday, biggest Saturday adjusted for inflation. It's huge. It puts Disney past the $1 billion mark in yearly domestic ticket sales faster than any other studio ever. But it didn't just break records in the US, it did a whole lot of business in foreign markets. Let's just list these off in alphabetical order, shall we? It has the biggest opening weekend in Bolivia, Brazil, Central America, Chile, Ecuador, Indonesia, Korea, Malaysia, Mexico, Peru, the Philippines, South Africa, Thailand, United Arab Emirates, Venezuela, West Africa, the biggest non-local opening in India, Turkey, the biggest Saturday in the UK, the biggest superhero opening in France and Germany. And overall, its overseas total gross for the weekend was $382.8 million. This, added to the domestic gross, gives this film the highest grossing opening weekend ever worldwide at $641 million. The previous record holder is The Fate of the Furious at $541.9 million. It's important to note that The Fate of the Furious still holds the record for highest grossing overseas opening weekend at $443.2 million, but what makes Infinity War's foreign total even more striking is the fact that it hasn't yet opened in China or Russia, whereas Fate of the Furious counts those markets amongst its opening weekend total. China has the second largest box office market in the world after the US, and if Infinity War had brought in anywhere near as much as Avengers Age of Ultron did in 2015, the total worldwide gross for Avengers Infinity War would likely have surpassed $800 million for its opening weekend. I'm not really sure why I even brought up the fact that this film hasn't been released in Russia yet, because that's such a tough market to break into. For reference, Avengers Age of Ultron made less money than John Carter did in Russia. No words. Altogether, this brings the MCU's total gross over the past 10 years to over $15 billion. For reference, the second highest film franchise, Star Wars, hasn't yet reached $9 billion in ticket sales yet. All in all, Avengers Infinity War is huge. Will it be huge enough to unseat one of James Cameron's films to become the number 1 or 2 highest grossing film of all time? Remains to be seen. I think unseating Titanic is certainly a likelihood, but Avatar? Unless it has some serious legs, I just can't see it. Prove me wrong, Infinity War. But while fans rejoice worldwide, it seems not everyone is happy with these record-smashing numbers. In South Korea, the film dominated, playing on over 95% of the country's theater screens, effectively crippling local films to the point of them flopping out of the gate. This is causing legislators in South Korea to think twice about letting something like this happen again, and they're now trying to approve a new law that will, once executed, limit theaters to devote a maximum of 40% of their screens movies to one film. One lawmaker said, "The revised laws on promotion of film and video that are currently pending at the National Assembly restricts conglomerates-owned multiplexes from allocating more than 40% of the screening slots to the same film. At this point, legal, institutional measures for screen monopoly seem necessary." So for you MCU fans in Korea, sorry, please be sure to pre-order your tickets next time so you can actually see it before they sell out. What do you think, guys? Will Thanos be able to unseat at least one of James Cameron's films at the all-time box office, or will we just have to wait until the next big thing? If you're impressed by my recitation of all these massive numbers and records broken by Infinity War's opening weekend, I think it's time we take our relationship to the next step. Maybe consider subscribing. I don't want to overstep. I mean, if not, a like or a comment will suffice, and thank you. Thanks, guys. Be sure to share this around if at all possible, and if this makes it to the top page of Reddit, I think I'm going to eat a sandwich today. If not, I guess I'll starve again.